So Dina, you know how when you go travel to a race, there's like a million and three things that go through your head?
Oh yeah.
Or is it just me? I
I
don't know.
know. I was gonna
Is it just
say
me?
a million and three and also plus one gazillion. So a
Yes,
lot
exactly.
is really,
Like
yeah.
there's a lot. Like you have to like especially if you're traveling, even if it's local, if you have to get in your car and drive whatever, an hour or whatever. I mean, there's so many things because like here's the thing, you plan months of training and logistics and nutrition and sleep and schedule and all that stuff. And then I feel like a lot of athletes are stressed out on race day because they're like, did I think of everything? Did I actually get everything done that I need to get done,
Yeah.
or did I forget something? So today, listeners, we are going to highlight the top three mistakes that most athletes make when they travel to races. And these are obviously nutrition mistakes. There are many other mistakes that we can make as athletes when traveling. But again, traveling can be on planes, trains, or automobiles. And I kind of feel like this is good based on the time of the year because whether it's a mid-season, early season race for you all listeners, these are just good things to think about when it comes to nutrition because here's the thing, they're so easy to identify if you know about them going
Yeah.
into it. That's the
That,
thing, right? And we're like Dina, you and I are both proactive about this. We're like, hey, let's make sure we can find all the challenges before you travel. So, so we can obviously find those solutions.
and it's
Yeah.
funny, Bob, because one of the messages that we often hear related to race nutrition or just like, oh yeah, the race is coming up, as sport dietitians say, like, don't try anything new on race day.
Yep.
And there's so much focus just on the race itself.
Yes.
And so, even travel or not, I mean, legitimately just focused on race nutrition, but there's so much that happens in the preparation days. And like that travel adds another layer of complication or complexity.
It's a good point. I feel like you hit it spot on. Like people are like, oh yeah, I just need to focus on my race nutrition, my competition nutrition. But I think we need to back up a little bit and think about the digestive system, the immune system, right? And that leads us to our first major mistake, and that is changing your daily nutrition habits. So this is where like consistency comes into play, right? So we think a lot about energy levels, we think about digestion, think about the immune system functioning, we even think about cognitive functioning, right? But if and you and I have done this personally, and we've had athletes do this personally, where you travel and you're like, I'm gonna have a little something different than I'm used to, and oh, that looks good, or you go out to dinner with some friends or family, whatever it is, right? Or you may not be prepared with where you're going, right? So, what do we need to talk about when we say the first mistake is changing daily nutrition habits?
I mean, I think of being as proactive as possible. And that, I mean, that could be a little over the top, I suppose, because you could break that down like, oh, I'm traveling on Tuesday for a Saturday race. And like all those hours that you have until the race to plan. I mean, that
Mm,
could be the extreme of thinking of what you typically eat, day to day, and what your routine is from daily meal perspective, not excluding hydration here at all, but I mean, you could map out because a lot of athletes don't do this. So I'm kind of flipping it all of a sudden
yeah.
to what you can do. But just like that opportunity, all those eating occasions that you're going to have, including if you are traveling by airplane, that throws in to
Mm,
the mix, Bob, like airport food. Are you going to do that?
yep.
And what is going to align with what you're used to from a daily nutrition perspective? So, I mean, I just think of like what is that opportunity in terms of days, number of meals, the travel considerations that you're having to work with, and you can go with it as much as you are able in terms of planning the stuff that you can take with you, the stuff that you can buy from airport or grocery stores. But this allows for you to be as proactive as possible instead of winging it, forgetting, taking for granted that your system is so used to what it has been used to. And now with the travel and like you're alluding to mentioning like immune system, the stress,
Mm.
food availability, and all these things. I mean, right there, we could get overwhelmed just thinking like, oh, is it worth doing all this pre-plan versus the potential negatives that can come with not aligning your eating habits with what you have been doing in those days traveling.
Yeah, I could definitely attest to that and say, as a sufferer, past tense of GI distress, I
Yeah.
would always be as methodical as possible just because I did not want to chance anything, D. Like I wanted to make sure I'm like, no. And that was because I had GI distress. Don't have it anymore. Fix that, been there, done that. But I feel like some athletes will kind of roll the dice with that too sometimes, right? So here's, when I was coaching my junior triathlon team, it's interesting because I did this, right? So I knew exactly the food preferences of all my athletes and, food allergies and tolerances, likes, dislikes, all that stuff. So whenever we would travel, and this is me as a coach, right? I would identify the supermarkets, the grocery stores. I would identify even the eating establishments around the hotel or the Airbnb or whatever, because that's, I go to that extreme. Again, listeners, you can go there if you want, but that's being proactive, right? Like I would say, okay, like if there's a sandwich shop, like I would go online if they had a website, which they do these days, by the way, and
Yeah.
you look at their menu and you look at the ingredients and you look at all that stuff and you just have a better idea of, okay, that can be an option. So
Yeah.
personally, when I travel, not only in the past with my junior triathlon team, but also with me during races, I like to have a couple different options for every meal, right? And I don't
Yeah.
necessarily set out a meal plan for myself, although I know about what foods I want to be eating, but I want three or four different options of maybe places, even if it's just grocery store, pick up some groceries and here's my yogurt in the morning or whatever it is, right? Make sure you have three to four options so you can rotate through, but they have to be GI safe for you. And please, familiar foods, no crazy spices, all the lists that we know. But I think the big thing is, yeah, you want to be as proactive as possible, not change your daily nutrition habits. No eyes are bigger than the stomach. Like, oh, that cheesecake looks good. Do you normally have that before a race? No.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you save it for after the race then, right? But
Yeah.
I think the big thing is planning, preparing, and doing a little bit of homework before you travel.
It's funny, Bob. I was just thinking not to date and age ourselves, but
Well, go ahead.
I'm
It's
going to
okay
say
to
it
do that.
back in the day.
Yeah.
Uh, just we didn't have Airbnb and VRBO
Oh,
like,
you're really
20
dating us
years
now, D.
ago. I
Yeah.
know, sorry.
Yeah.
So we had like the best case was maybe the kitchenette hotel
Yes.
suite that
Yes.
had a little microwave and a tiny little thing. And of course, restaurants have been around forever, but just like how cool is this that we do have opportunity to get rental houses or
Hmm.
condos and things like that and have your own kitchen to just facilitate like, oh, I'm going to make this a little easier on myself. I might have a few meals out, but at least that opportunity for those who can afford that and, make that part of the plan for their travels. That's super cool and really does help if you can make that a part. And it goes along with this mistake that we're talking about. I mean, the more that you can set up your on site arrangements, the more you will benefit. I mean, Bob, have you ever had an athlete come back from race travels and say, I'm so bummed. I planned ahead all this stuff and I wish I hadn't done that.
Yeah.
And, I
Yeah.
just have never heard that story. Whereas I've heard the flip side, like, shoot,
Right.
I
Right.
did have the cheesecake and
Mhm.
totally ate different in
Yep.
advance of the race, and I felt like junk
Or
that race
sometimes
morning.
even with the restaurants, like I'm with you. I love controlling as much as possible with the food. Like if you can go to the grocery store, if you have a kitchen to prepare and you're okay in preparing. But some athletes go into restaurants and yeah, great, right? But sometimes you don't know how restaurants are preparing foods or what oils they're using. Like
Yeah,
I've had a lot of athletes get sick in their stomach before a race
yeah,
because maybe a familiar food is cooked in some type of oil that they're not used to or some ingredients, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
sometimes these things are also hidden in food. So the more you can control, cook, prepare, the better.
yeah.
Okay. Number two, what's the second biggest mistake that we see athletes make as they're traveling to races?
Oh shoot, Bob. I mean, I'm thinking even of the role of the weather, the
Mm,
climate we're traveling to, or I mean, most people are checking weather forecast, making sure they have the gear, apparel, and all that stuff planned. But are we adjusting hydration plan? Are we thinking about our needs in terms of how it relates to the environment we're going to be in, like
mm,
tropical weather or high mountain weather or
yep.
things like that that can affect? what we're going to consume.
Yeah, so really paying attention to the environment and the environmental conditions. I have a funny story about that, which kind of solidifies this. But it was this year, and I don't know if you remember this, Dee, but there's an ultra running race in Arizona called the Cocodona 250, right?
Uh-huh.
250-mile race, and it's in Arizona. It's in, what is it,
Yeah.
May, I believe.
Yeah, it's
It's
in May.
you like it's gonna be hot. Like it's hot and it's hot because it's
Yes.
Arizona, right?
And dry.
And but
Yeah.
this, yeah, and dry. And but this year, so you go into it, you're like, okay, and I just read about this. I wasn't training or anything for it, but I'm reading about it. I'm like, yeah, it does. It's gonna be hot. It's Arizona. And then I read all the stories of the race. Do you remember this? And it
Well,
rained
it
and it
rains.
snowed
Yeah.
in Arizona. So can
Right.
you imagine being that athlete going into it saying, okay, I know it's going to be dry and I know it's going to be hot and I'm planning for that. And here's my hydration, my electrolytes and my food. And all of a sudden you're running and you're like, oh my God, it's raining. Um, I didn't really plan for that. So
Yeah.
along with that too is knowing that things happen, right? Even in
Yes.
the Arizona desert, yes, it can rain or
Yeah.
snow, hail, right? So that, I mean, that's probably not common, obviously, right? But it's to your point where you kind of have to know, not only check the weather and do your 7 or 10 day forecast out, but maybe even, because I've had athletes who've done this, D, in like 7 days out, they're like, oh my gosh, we're seeing whatever rain in the forecast. It's not supposed to rain. So all of a sudden we have like 3 or 4 days before they leave to update their nutrition plan, right? So
Yeah.
my point is maybe just expect the unexpected sometimes. Like if you're in, a hot and humid environment, maybe one day, maybe race day, it's all of a sudden cool and dry. Like who knows, right? So
Right.
I kind of feel like there should be a few different plans, maybe not solidified, but maybe having to adjust accordingly and knowing you might have to adjust accordingly.
That could be something like, shoot, my fingers were so cold. It
Yeah.
got so cold or so frigid. I couldn't open my package of chews.
Yep.
And oh darn, if I had only had my gloves or blah blah, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, that stuff we can't always predict, but trying to think again as proactively as possible or having those other adjustments available to us to make sure on race day we're not compromising the
Yes.
plan too much.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so that's the second biggest mistake we see. What's the last one? So obviously there are a lot more. We're just trying to choose the top three, right? So the
Yeah.
last biggest mistake that we've seen is,
And I can relate to this one personally too, Bob. When we kind of deviate from the timing plan that we had set up for ourselves, if we're trying to abide by a fueling and hydration strategy set up on a timing plan, which we all should be, and somewhere along the lines, especially if it's early on, things get in the way, we lose track, we get sidetracked. And so we're off timing plan and how much of a difficulty that can be to catch up in air quotes. So that I think falls into one of the very large mistake categories for so many athletes is like getting off of that timing plan,
yeah.
whether it's intentional or unintentional. And I understand that can happen regardless of travel, but certainly with time zone changes, with those climate changes we were talking about, or taking for granted that we're better off than what we think we are. Like there's a whole lot that can go into this timing plan
So you're talking
diversion,
about nutrient timing before, during,
nutrient timing.
and afterwards too, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And there's like fatigue also. Like I can't tell you how many races I've been in where you just get tired. And then as you get tired, like if you don't have a pacer or someone with you or crew, you're like, you don't think about eating or drinking anymore, right? So it's
Yeah.
the opportunity, like it's like deviating from your plan, right? You've got to, and remember again, back in the day, check,
Check.
triathletes were infamous for this, for setting their watch to intervals.
Yeah.
15, 20, 30-minute intervals, and it just beeps at them. They're like, okay, okay, I have to eat, I have to drink, I have to do something. And whether that works for you or not, great. But I feel like that actually helps some athletes stay with their plan. Now,
Hmm.
of course, you may have to deviate a little bit if you've got gut rot, if your GI system is acting
Yeah.
up, if something happens, sure, we understand that. But going into it with knowing your plan, sticking to your plan, I think that's super important. I just had an athlete I was talking to who will be doing a marathon this fall, and we looked at the course profile because I'm always interested in that because believe it or not, that does actually affect your fueling strategies. And it's interesting because the first, I don't know, it was maybe first 4 or 5 miles was kind of downhill. And he was celebrating. He's like, yeah, downhill. I'm like, well, you got to watch a few things, right? I mean,
Yeah.
don't go with the rabbits. I mean, so his goal is like finish, have fun, right? So I'm like, hey, don't go with the rabbits. You've never done a marathon before. He's a marathon virgin, right? And I'm like, okay, but also this may change your fueling strategy, right? Because if it is a good downhill to start with, and you get caught up in the whole excitement of it's my first marathon and it's a downhill and I'm feeling good and everybody's in this pack and I'm in this pack and all of a sudden you forgot to drink the first 5 miles or if you forgot to do something, you know what I mean? And that
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, like you were saying, you get behind the eight ball, right? And
Yeah.
then that affects the rest of your race.
And I think you were starting to touch on this too. Before the race, like because we've traveled, we might be in those other conditions, other environments we're not used to, the time zone thing, or if, geez, international travel and the
Yeah.
like is like that timing, nutrient timing plan that we have had in our home environment. And now
Mm,
aligning that with where we are. And if we're getting messed up before the race, Bob, how much that can impact race day.
yeah.
So I know I should have started with that when you handed it over to me, but I
Yeah.
was thinking of the race. Geez.
Yeah.
But those days prior and that timing strategy, and it can go either way, but oftentimes it can be under fueling, missing some meals. We're getting our race stuff ready and just like, I'm not hungry because I'm stressed out.
Hmm.
And just all that cascade of results can then, oh, shoot, kind of ruin the race day.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, anything to add to that, D?
Well, like you were saying, there's a whole bunch we could add to this, Bob. But these are common
Yeah.
mistakes athletes are making when they travel for races and things. So
Yeah.
we definitely could expand on that. I know our listeners are like, "Oh, you didn't mention this," and
Yeah.
I've had this issue, but I think being proactive and planning and thinking ahead does us so
Yeah.
much good.
Well, and you know what I was thinking to your point, D, is maybe we have our listeners head on over to our Patreon account, patreon.com/ISN podcast, join our free community, free membership. We do have a couple of different memberships, right? But join the
Yeah,
free one and post on there because this is where we interact with all of you guys and girls and post on there and tell us like maybe some mistakes that you've made. Like we want to know your mistakes because here's the thing, we are all about trying to find solutions to those mistakes. And maybe it's just like a funny story. Maybe it's a wow, I don't know how to fix this. Like let's
yeah.
lean on each other and use our community to try to help fix some things for you.
That sounds good. I'd love to hear from our community and our new members what's going on, even travel tips that you all are putting into
Mm.
place for
So
yourself.
important. And here's the
Yeah.
thing, we have such a diverse audience that everybody does different things, right? So
Hmm.
how cool would it be to get all these different perspectives on even different competitions or different sports or different thing like I'm sure there are hundreds of things that we
Yeah.
haven't thought of because maybe we're not engaged in that sport or we don't travel to that area. So yeah, let's share. Let's be a little bit proactive, as you were saying, and just maybe share some stories on our free community.
Okay, Bob. Well, with that, I think we will conclude this episode and thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch y'all on our next episode.